What song do you think will still be popular in 100 years? I'm only in my early 50s and I've already lived long enough to see top 10 hit songs completely disappear from public consciousness. There are multi-platinum acts from the early 80s that people not much younger than me have never even heard of, so it's hard to predict, but I'd lean towards songs that have already been popular for more than a generation. Yellow Submarine, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Beethoven Symphony No. 5, Bohemian Rhapsody, Let It Be, Country Road, Imagine, What a Wonderful World, In the Temple of the Mountain King, Lose Yourself. Frank Sinatra most known classic? Like Fly Me to the Moon, I Love You Baby and My Way for examples. I Love You Baby is actually called Can't Take My Eyes Off of You and is by Frankie Valli. For some reason there's just a mislabeled YouTube video of the cover, not actually by Sinatra, that's managed to get 120 million views and confuses everyone who searches the most recognizable line in the song. What song from 100 plus years ago is still popular? I guess some folk tunes that we sing as kids songs, maybe a bunch of religious stuff. David Bowie, Starman and/or Space Oddity. I'm assuming we'll still make movies about space in 100 years, and there's a rule that if you make a movie about space, you have to use one of those two songs. Surprised to not see Pink Floyd in any of the top comments. Another brick in the wall, Wish You Were Here and TBF The Whole Dark Side of the Moon are timeless classics. I can definitely see some prog rock albums being treated like classical pieces are now. We've already had 50 years of teenagers discovering Dark Side of the Moon, what's another 50? Many comments already indicate what I thought when I saw the title. Mostly the songs that are already classics today, Stairway to Heaven, Highway to Hell, American Pie and so on. Classical music, Beethoven, Mozart etc., is pretty much a given. I honestly think not much from the last 20 years qualifies, not necessarily because it's bad but because music has differentiated so much into more and more genres and subgenre. The only two songs from the mainstream that come to my mind which might have a chance are Eminem's Lose Yourself and Adele's Rolling in the Deep. I'm not even sure what from my favorite genre, metal, might make it. Let It Go. Never underestimate the power of Disney. Also, Snow White is almost 100 years old and everyone still knows Whistle While You Work, Hi Ho, and Someday My Prince Will Come. Wouldn't it be nice? My dad has loved the Beach Boys his whole life. I've loved them for all of mine, and if my kids don't pass on that love to their own children and so on, I'll have done something wrong. I've scrolled for a long way and haven't seen any mention of Bob Dylan, though I'm sure he's mentioned somewhere in here. A lot of his songs have a timeless, ethereal quality. If I had to pick one I would go with something from Blood on the Tracks, maybe Shelter from the Storm? It could be literally anything thanks to memes. Homestuck uses a song called Midnight Crew from 1909 because there's a group called the Midnight Crew in the comic by sheer coincidence and a fan pointed out the pre-existing song, so the song was then included in the comic later and has become quite popular in the fandom. So, who fucking knows? Meme culture probably isn't going away anytime soon and literally anything could be brought back at any moment for any reason. Big Chungus was like a half-second in one random Looney Tunes short and no one cared about it until suddenly the internet really cared. In general I'd say music that is already fairly old and still manages to find popularity with certain groups of people. Things like classical music, Mozart, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, big band jazz, classic rock and folk music, and other forms of music before the music assembly line era. Probably the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and some other extremely famous artists. To be fair, We have no historical precedent for modern music. Recorded music makes it so people can listen to it anytime, any place, which was impossible centuries prior. Chances are, our extremely popular acts will persevere. The Beatles, Frank Sinatra, and Elvis have persisted for 60–80 years, so they're getting close to living 100 years in popular consciousness. I don't know why I immediately thought of Blackbird by the Beatles, but I'm going with that. I think because it's got the timeless feel to it. You look at music 100 years ago and it's blues/gospel/classic stuff. Blackbird sounds like it could have been made in 1920, so I can see it sticking around for a century. Not even a big Beatles fan, it just popped in my head. Pomp and Circumstance will probably be played at graduations for years to come. I think many classical pieces will probably stand the test of time, especially if they have lasted this long. Countless pieces have been kind of forgotten, but there are plenty that will still be around in 100 years. A few examples I saw listed already, but I wanted to add the 1812 Overture as well. I'm going to give an answer for a song released after 2000. Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. That song would have been a hit at any point throughout history. I think it'll still be popular in 100 years. I put that song as well as Hey Ya by Outkast as the two songs of the 2000s that have the most staying power. In another 5–15 years, when people start doing vintage 2000s stuff, I think those will re-emerge as total classics. A classic work of jazz probably. I dare say 95% of the people in this thread could not name a single song that was popular in 1921, and the 5% who couldn't name more than two. Everything that is popular today will be forgotten, probably even more forgotten than 1921, because at least those songs were recorded to a physical media that can be collected. The only music people will remember 100 years from now that was recorded in the last 100 years will be something like Giant Steps by Coltrane that is studied academically or what have you. Personally, I think some Miku Vocaloid songs will still be popular. Her whole design and idea is so futuristic. Assuming we don't get wiped out by climate change or start an apocalypse, I think life will be a lot more online than it is now, and a virtual pop idol from the early 2000s would fit in well. I think you will see a lot of video game soundtracks be appreciated as the classical works of art that they are, and not just video game soundtracks. I would like to think in 100 years the Everybody's Gone to the Rapture host will get the respect it deserves outside of the classical composer spheres. Remember that movie Yesterday, about a guitarist who wakes up in a world where the Beatles never happened, but he still remembers all of their songs? He finds out when his friends give him a new guitar for, I think, his birthday or something, so he, of course, pops out Yesterday, and they're all blown away because they've never heard it before. But like ... seriously, if you hand somebody a guitar, what are the odds that they'll play anything by the Beatles? Maybe not 100%, but I'd wager that it's at least the largest chunk of the pie. And Yesterday, Hey Jude, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, these have been staples of learning to play the guitar for over 50 years now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they last for another century. Undercover Martin by Two Door Cinema Club. It's used in a ton of memes, and memes have a tendency to repeat and come back over time, just like we have seen with the Doge and Trollface memes. The song also just has the perfect vibe for driving down a highway in the middle of summer with some friends. If it's already listened to for 90+ years at this point, it'll still be popular enough 100 years from now. Maybe the Beatles and Queen will still hold up, and I don't know anywhere near enough about hip-hop from not being a fan of it. I have listened to enough to make that decision. Thank you, to know which have truly hit a cultural nerve to be considered timeless. Almost nothing contemporary. It's never songs, per se, that remain popular. but the music. Considering that very few of the contemporary artists these days use actual instruments, the music dies when the digital format dies, or someone finally hits the reset button. The music, on the other hand, and assuming it can be played with an instrument, will remain. Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. I think it's been made a timeless piece by the memes. While memes come and go, the Rickroll has stayed somewhat relevant over the years. Not to mention, more than half my friends, family, myself included, just love the song anyway, so a Rickroll just causes a smile and warrants listening to the whole song. R. Rahman will probably gain a massive following in the coming decades and celebrated. His work is amazing, and he has already won an Oscar for his music. People know him for Slumdog Millionaire, but he has so much work done in Slumdog Millionaire won't even make his top 20 album. Here is one of his first song, 1992. That helped him gain fame first in Tamil cinema. https://b/b/4mb7a. On a more general note, people also do not realize how good music in Asia, similar in other parts of the world, but I know more about Asian music, so I am talking Abtasia. Its music spans 1000s of years and they are just as good as many of its Western counterparts. It just have not had a chance because, like many other things, everything is seen through a Eurocentric and colonial lens. As economic power shifts to Asia, I do believe you will see a huge revival into these music and better appreciation from the West. And let's not forget that China and India alone account for 1/3 or so of the world population. I believe rising income is correlated with rising education, and with rising education, you will see more interest and celebration of their own music. Mozart or Beethoven is amazing, and they probably will be celebrated 100 years from now, but you also had many in the East who were just as good back then. Those artists will probably be celebrated more and recognized much better. Because of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, just counting this one band, I know JoJo has referenced or named a lot of songs from many bands into the stands or places, etc. Queen's songs are for sure going to stay around for a long time. I think people will always listen to Motown, like, it won't be huge, but somewhere, someone will always be listening to the classic Motown hits. Also, in 100 years after WW3 has destroyed civilization and alien beings come to our planet, they are undoubtedly going to find Fleetwood Mac's Rumors vinyl ruins encased in amber and simultaneously revive that album. I swear there's like 7 copies of that record in every record store on Earth. I have no doubt that Blue Monday by New Order will stay in the spotlight until humanity goes extinct. The song has a bizarre future sound to it that has been amazing millions for decades. It changed electronic music and arguably fastened or kick-started the futuristic electronic music that we listen to today, and will continue to for probably a long time. Go listen to it now if you haven't already. Truly one of the best songs ever. Feels Like Summer by Donald Glover. Basically, it's about global warming being our impending doom, but we're all too distracted by pop culture and work and other things that are insignificant, so we won't do anything to fix it. I know it's not hella popular or anything, but I think the concept of the song will be very relevant in the next 100 years. You have to remember that classical music isn't just popular because it's good music, but also because of how and who composed the music, as well as the emotional triggers of the song. So the musicians who will maybe veer into classical by 100 years from now culture would have to not only write their own songs, but play fairly unique pieces. Pound the Alarm by Nicki Minaj. I'm hoping that within 100 years, the U.S. government will decide to make this the official civil defense siren. I mean, it just makes sense, you know? The most popular song of 1921 was I Ain't Got Nobody, which is mostly forgotten. The most popular song of 2021 will soon be forgotten. What will be remembered in 100 years? Nothing from this year, that's for sure. I feel like the time in music history we live in is unprecedented, because before the 1920s it was mostly folk music and hymnals that were considered popular music, and before that it was operas and classical music, and before that, so we even know. So the last 500 years of music was condensed down to a handful of classical composers and operas. Then in the mid-1900s we get radio. Radio changed the way the world listened to music. So much music has been made from the first music, until the invention of beeswax records, and most of it was all lost. Unless you're a musical historian, lived through the time period, or are a fan of music from before you were born, whenever that may be, you probably won't have any music you specifically wish to keep alive. I'd like to think that certain artists would be remembered from the last 100 years, but so many times we either realize what terrible human beings they were, or that they ripped off their music from other cultures. All that being said, I hope that 100 years from now we still have Christmas music, classic screens leaves, Santa Claus is coming to town, Rudolph and Frosty and the like. I'm my headcanon I can hear Jean-Luc Picard teaching Data about Christmas and singing the Christmas song by Nat King Cole. There are many songs that have lasted hundreds, even thousands of years, and will last as long as there are adherents to the religions that use them in their practices. There are Hindu ragas that are over 3,000 years old. Cantillation marks were used as early as the year 70 in Hebrew texts and were formalized in the 9th century in Torah. Christian monks learned musical notation for Gregorian chants in the 10th century, a precursor to modern musical notation. Their melodies are still sung in Catholic churches and incorporated in modern compositions. The Adhan has been called out from mosques since 622. Though the melody has evolved in different times in parts of the world, the words remain the same. You may say that that's not the same as the song being popular, but I would answer that there are people all over the world that listen to and sing the same songs every week their entire lives, as did their ancestors, and as will their descendants. Piano Man, Billy Joel. It has the timeless sound of an old-timey piano sing-along, and it's already a half-century old, released in 1973, but I bet you could play it in almost any bar today and 90% of the people would know the lyrics and get right into it. Another one bites the dust, Queen. I'm a big fan of Queen, so of course I would know this one. However, my classmates enjoyed chanting Another Bites the Dust, and Another One Gone, and Another One Gone, Another One Bites the Dust whenever a kid went to the nurses. Combine that with Queen being iconic, and I think it will be around for a while. I would have said Never Gonna Give You Up, but I guess the younger generations have moved on from that. Tragic. Joni Mitchell's A Case of You. Lost love songs always last. I remember that time you told me you said, "Love is touching souls." Surely you touched mine, 'cause part of you pours out of me in these lines from time to time. Bohemian Rhapsody. Some wacky magic stuff had to have happened for it to be so extremely popular and well known by the vast majority of people, to my knowledge, for such a long time so far. Wayne's World actually helped make Bohemian Rhapsody more popular. It wasn't really the mega hit it is today. It debuted and reached number 9 on the charts. By the time Wayne's World came out, the band itself was in a bit of a rut. After the movie released, the song climbed all the way up to number 2 on the charts and has been widely regarded ever since. I think lots of classical music will stay relevant. I can't imagine anyone setting aside Beethoven or Chopin, but if you're looking for something contemporary, I'd say God Only Knows by the Beach Boys will stay relevant, if for no other reason than that it's so interesting to music theorists. Jujamu go kono sura kayaka jori su igio no su igio matsu anrai matsu furai matsu kun or yuto kroni sabuto kriya barakaji no barakaji pipo no shuringen no gurindai no ponpa kalpi I no ponpa kane no chokimai no chojuk.